Again. So hi everyone, welcome for joining us on today. Welcome to today's webinar. The session is being recorded today and will be shared with all attendees and all registrants afterwards. So do let us know if you'd like a copy of that recording, we'll get that online. Please note that we have muted all attendees, but we would love for you to send us your questions in the chat box. So if you look at the screen, there's a little bubble at the bottom, which is a little chat bubble. Feel free to let us know if you're having any technical or sound issues in that chat box. And as we go through, if you have questions for the panelists, for the presenters, please feel free to pop your questions in there and we'll either address those through the webinar, but also we've left some time at the end. The webinar is due to run for 1 hour today, and we think that we're going to cover some great content and some great use cases. I'm really proud to have such a fantastic list of panelists with us today, and we'll take some time to let everyone introduce themselves. Before we get going, I did want to thank the panelists and thank everyone who has registered and everyone who's attended. We know there's a lot going on just now, and so we hope that this session offers you some great value to take away. Today's event is hosted by Salesforce.org. Salesforce.org is the social impact heart of Salesforce. We work with non-profit organisations, education institutions and philanthropic organisations, and the dedicated business unit that works specifically with that sector. So we're going to start with some introductions. I'm going to do my introduction and then pass over to our MC for today, Zach. My name is Leanne McGrory. I look after the EMEA region for Salesforce.org, and I'm really proud to help be a part of this event today. So thank you for joining. I'll be hosting the chat. I'll be manning the chat today. So again, please feel free to ask questions or let us know if you have any items. Zach, I'll pass to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Leanne. Great to be with everybody. My name is Zach Kaufman. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Vera Solutions. I'll be facilitating the discussion today, and I'll tell you a little bit more about Vera's work and our product Amp Impact in just a minute, as we'll be talking about that as one of the examples or a couple of examples today. Nick, over to you.
Folks, very excited to be with you all today. I don't know if you want to show the slides now or we're doing that later, but I'm Nick. I'm the CEO of TechChange, and thrilled to be with you all today. We build beautiful and engaging online courses on topics that matter, and thrilled to be here with you all today.
Great. Elena, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Also excited here to be on this panel with such a wonderful panelist. My name is Elena Bonometti. I'm the CEO of Tostan, which is a West African-based organization. I'm calling from Dakar, Senegal, and I'm thrilled to be here to bring kind of a grassroots organization voice that has worked for 30 years now in West Africa to really empower communities at the grassroots, to develop and fulfill their own vision of well-being and really to inspire large-scale movements for the respect and the enforcement of human rights and dignity for all. So excited to be here and looking forward to the conversation. Over to Tim.
It helps if I mute. Thank you. Sorry about that. My name is Timothy Fives. I'm the Senior Manager for Business Pipeline Services for Catholic Relief Services. Catholic Relief Services has been around since 1943, providing humanitarian aid, emergency response and recovery, agriculture, livelihood services overseas. And today we're doing just shy of $1 billion worth of aid in over 100 different countries. And my role specifically as our Business and Pipeline Services Manager is I manage the Salesforce platform and ancillary technologies that manages our aid in those 100 countries. And I'm just thrilled to be here with Amp Impact, and we're going to be talking a little bit about our lessons learned and how we're rebuilding our infrastructure and how we're increasing our capacity to be able to deliver services. So, Zach, thank you very much for having me.
Awesome, thank you. And really excited to dig into the discussion with you guys on capacity building for digital transformation. a bit of background on Vera Solutions before we dig into Tostan and CRS's work and TechChange's, of course, in a bit more detail. So Vera is a mission-driven technology company. We're really working to change the way the social sector works, and we think of our mission as amplifying the impact of the social sector using cloud and mobile tech. We've grown to a global team of 65 staff on 5 continents around the globe, and work with 311 organizations since we got started now. We grew out of a nonprofit ourselves 10 years back and have been steadily growing and working with more and more organizations around the globe. We are a Salesforce Impact partner, but we're particularly focused on monitoring evaluation, program, grant and project management solutions, not just kind of CRM fundraising solutions, which I think you often see in the Salesforce space. Taking the learnings from dozens and dozens of projects that we did in our first 5-6 years, we realized that we could have much more of an impact in the sector if we had a packaged solution for portfolio management and impact measurement on the Salesforce platform. So what we found was that the Salesforce platform is really, really well suited to these kinds of use cases. But we found ourselves kind of doing the same thing over and over again, and realized it would really be better for everybody if we had a packaged solution that kind of got organizations to 60-70% of the way there from the get-go. So we started building Amp Impact back in 2015, launched it on the Salesforce App Exchange in 2017. It's being used now in over 50 countries, and would love to chat with you guys more about Amp and how it works. But given today's topic is really around people and capacity building, I want to turn the table to really talk about that. This is something that's obviously critical to our work and to our mission. And if we're really working to save lives and change the way that the sector is working, make the social sector more efficient and effective, it really does start with capacity and with people. So I want to turn to each of the panelists and maybe we can start with Elena. So tell us a little bit more about what Tostan's doing and tell us about what capacity building for digital transformation means in the context of your work in West Africa.
Thank you so much, Zach, for such a great introduction. And whatever you said resonates too much with me. And we are really happy to have been in this journey, the transformational journey with you guys. And I will tell you a little bit more about it later. So for those who don't know Tostan is a program that has evolved over the past 30 years. We are actually in the education sector, but we have a very holistic approach. So we provide the information, basic information, and also a safe space to discuss sensitive issues to communities at the grassroots. And so as you see from the slides, we have a very adaptable and model program, and it is based on creation. So when I was preparing for the webinar, I really thought, okay, let me start by saying that Tostan actually is born to listen, to give voice to feedback. So it's really a data-driven organization since day one, but mostly qualitative data. So it was born to respond to the need of people of being prepared to actually host or to receive development projects. So people at the grassroots were really not having, they didn't have a clear vision for their future. No one had helped them to really realize what their priorities are for them or put them together. And so the model is really working and responding to communities' prioritization in terms of goals and to integration of all people in the community, men, women, adults, and youth. And it's inclusive because all community members come together, but also because it is in local languages. So we do not work in French and English, but we really work in the language in which people express themselves. And so the journey that we have, and our flagship program is called the Community Empowerment Program, is really to build on community strength, to really enhance values for practices that are not aligned with those values to be abandoned. And we are quite famous in the world for the abandonment of female genital cutting and child marriage. And that is really an example of social norms change that we have brought to the world. So when when we look at this, so our strength, our DNA, which was really learning from data again, but learning from people, so feedback from people, and to embody that and to develop that program. We have actually, based on this feedback loop, improved our program over 30 years. And I think when I look at our capacity building journey, in particular with digitalization, it was important to us to supplement this original DNA, and then to help us enhance what we are doing and the quality of what we are doing, and unite also the different teams that have been able through the different countries to really adapt that model without really a standardized, highly standardized approach to respect really, again, those feedback loops. So the journey, I think, has been, again, focusing on enhancing what we have been doing and get better quality. So to get the best analysis, to get the best quality of the data that we have. And that quantitative has allowed also to increase the velocity of the feedback loop. And that is so important for an organization like us after 30 years to see the approach going to scale and really to amplify the impact of what we are doing, to go back to the relationship with Vera Solutions. That's why we needed new tech, new technology-based tools to really enhance once again and unite and being able really to compare what we were doing, to learn once more from what we were doing, and to enhance and to improve the program.
Thanks for that, Elena, and really refreshing to hear that. I love the kind of obsession with feedback loops. I think often we hear from nonprofits where it's just we're trying to survive and make sure we can do a good job of reporting to donors, and often those feedback loops can be internally and really hearing from beneficiaries what they think can get lost. And so it's just awesome to see you guys as a role model for that. Tim, maybe I can turn to you. Obviously, you guys are working in a much more global context, but when you guys think about capacity building internally and digital transformation, what does that journey look like at CRS right now?
Yeah, thanks, Zach. So I think just to tie into what Elena was saying, is a lot of it's about velocity, and how do we address the needs of the organization at a strategic level. And so to give a little bit of context for the people on the call, 18 months ago or so, I started at CRS, and one of the things that we were looking at was the Salesforce platform itself. And it was been installed for over 9 years. It's been highly successful in what it was designed to do. But over that 9 years, you accumulate a lot of technical debt. Most of our platform was customized. When we started it, as an example, PSP really was in its infancy, or wasn't even there yet, right? So we built and did what we needed to do to get the platform where it needed to be. But when we started to look forward, we were at our capacity. We have only a few people on our tech team. They were a little bit overwhelmed, and so we were looking like, how do we kind of leapfrog and get us to where we want to be? And there was a nexus of decisions happening. So we were looking at that at the same time the organization was looking at agency metrics and your platform, and they had certain requirements, and so we made the leap to say, let's just rebuild the org. Let's start over from a technology perspective. We're not starting over from a knowledge perspective, because we know what the processes look like, and how do we move that forward. So we're going from almost I would say 90% customized solution in Salesforce to a 90%, hopefully, this is what we're tracking towards, declarative solution on the platform. And why that's important is now the changes and the enhancements and the bolt-ons and the bigger projects we can do much quicker with much fewer resources. So that's kind of our kind of where we're at now. And in terms of the change management, what we wanted to do and where we had to change that the organization's mindset was actually creating that vision, right? Like what are those big rocks that we want to accomplish with the platform? We'll talk about this throughout the talk today, but how do we bring everybody together to get on the same page? How how do we share that information between our donor services team, our advocacy team, our field team, and things like that. And so throughout some of the slides, we created that vision, and then we started to look at what our values were, which is on the screen right here. But how are we empowering that data-driven decisions in our organization? What does that mean, right? So we think about it that the majority of our information is open to the organization. We're trying to break down silos and talk a little bit about that, I think, in subsequent parts of the conversation. So it's been a journey, and we're looking forward to getting this completed this summer, as you know, and getting the new system up and running. So over to you.
Thanks for that, Tim. And yeah, I look forward to digging into that a bit more. I think we're hearing kind of two quite different cases here of transformation. One, as Tostan is looking to transform to become to move in more of a quantitative direction from having been primarily qualitatively oriented, and for you guys at CRS, really looking at going from a heavily customized solution, one that is a bit more extensible and a little bit more flexible and less dependent on custom code, which is always great to hear. I want to turn over to Nick to zoom out a little bit further and tell us tell us about in a bit more depth what TechChange is up to. And I mean, you guys, I really look at you guys when I think about capacity building for digital transformation. I think of you guys as really a leader in this space and just doing such an incredible service for the sector. So bring us up to speed about what's been going on in recent weeks and in the last years as you've been building TechChange.
Yeah, thank you, Zach. And just reiterating, I'm a big fan of all things Vera Solutions, Salesforce, and this AMP Impact journey that you've been on. It's just been wonderful to watch. So yeah, as Zach mentioned, we are in the business of building beautiful and engaging, mostly online courses, and certainly everything online these days in COVID times, on topics that matter, which means, next slide, that we are working with hundreds of organizations in the social sector, like CRS, like Tostan, like TechSoup, PopTech, United Nations Foundation, World Bank, to really think about how to deliver content in new ways, to build capacity. And some of that, Zach, is internal facing, right? How do we train our own staff to be a bit more tech savvy, a bit more kind of digitally forward? And some of that is kind of hardwired into program design. So going out and training end users in all things tech. And so we have, as you can imagine, over the past 10 years, got all kinds of great insights into how to do the messy work of digital transformation, how to build that capacity through a variety of mediums. Next slide. I wanted to mention, last week we just are fresh off this experience of having curated a virtual conference called the Global Digital Development Forum, with over 4,000 participants, 150 sessions, a 16-hour span, and really, I think a powerful way forward for how we do virtual capacity building around digital, not just internal to our organizations, but really across the sector. So much great knowledge sharing going on, which I'm happy to talk more about. And then maybe the last slide I'll share now, looking at specific engagements. Yes, we work closely with a lot of nonprofits, but we also work with large multilateral organizations and tech companies, Facebook and Microsoft. And so each one of these different actors has kind of got a different agenda and a different approach to what constitutes digital transformation. The tech companies wanting to really figure out how to kind of, like Salesforce, kind of have their existing products provide value for the nonprofit sector, but then large donors trying to figure out how to actually improve their own internal capacity to give out money related to digital things. And to build that kind of value supply chain or stream all the way down to implementing organizations and small NGOs. So excited to talk more about all those things in the rest of the webinar.
Awesome, thanks for that, Nick. So, I mean, all of you guys really talked about people, right? And I think people are really at the center of the conversation here. Whether we're thinking about people within our organization, whether we're thinking about our collaboration across organizations. Elena, if I can turn to you to kind of think about share a little bit about the people that you've involved on this journey and the work that you're doing in transforming the way that Tostan is working. Would love to hear a little bit more about who you've involved, why, and a lot, you know, what parts of the journey have you gotten them involved in?
Thank you, Zach, for this wonderful question, and that resonates so much with us, because actually there are different level, different people, the right people. I think we got on our journey at different level. So let me start by choosing the right partner for doing this journey. And I think, you know, this goes back to really to the Vera Solution team, very committed, as you say, to amplify the work of others. And I think that mattered so much to us. And so I think when we started with other vendors, with other partners, but then eventually we found each other. And I think that was really a great step for us to really have a very responsive team, but also people that are used to really to customize at the same time that have a product that is, you know, that is already a great starting point. And so working with Amp Impact and actually internalize it with our system was really a great journey. Actually, we have even given the platform a local name. It's called Buntung. It's a Mandanga name. You might not know, Zach, that you have also a local name, which means the granary, you know, where the African communities put whatever is most, you know, most important to them, in particular in very sensitive times. So, you know, having the right partner, of course, was one piece. Then we also had visionary partners that funded this work. And I think that is very important. There are so many organizations now, and I'm so happy to see many of them on the slide that Nick just presented. They really believe on the importance of data, and of data in our case was really to make really informed decision-making. For programmatic purposes. As you said, we are really obsessed by this feedback loop, by improving the organization, by improving the approach, and make it more accessible to others. So having those data, qualitative and quantitative, together was very critical to us. So also having the right partners on that side, the visionary partners, and we had the opportunity to work with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation on this. They really believed in the holistic model, but they wanted us to show really, more details in terms of data, of course, with regards to all the outcomes that come out of this holistic model. And that was across health, education, the environment, the economic empowerment, and the governance. So it was important to have those qualitative that really speaks to the agency, to the empowerment, in particular of women, but of the community, to take charge of themselves, but also to be complemented by those data, by those quantitative data, so that the analysis was becoming richer and more meaningful. Then, of course, people inside the organization, they are the change makers that make the things possible. And I think in our case, I think trust is one of the key words, as well as we have those wonderful qualitative data because the communities trust us, so they are able to engage us with the conversation that are very sensitive, and then we get those information because we are in the communities with them for 3 years. Now, I think trust was also critical for programs, in particular program staff, to understand why it was so important to invest in this digital transformation, and why their work was going to enhance and make their life easier. And sometimes when we add, you know, in particular learning, of course, Salesforce, getting into, you know, Amp Impact, and, you know, getting into new things, and just, you know, for people that are the grassroots, that have very little access to the data, that have little access to electricity. So there were a lot of challenges. And I think so it was so important to build that trust, that appetite for that journey. And I think when we made it clear that this was to enhance what we were doing and to allow them really to compare, to learn from each other, I think that has been really the trigger for people to really get interested. And of course, challenges are there. I mean, I think it's important to get everyone on the same page, and there are people that have a faster pace than others because of the access that they have, or the, you know, being more tech savvy. And I think it's important to bring the team along and to be together in that journey. So I think you know, having the right people at the right place with trust, and having that appetite to learn, to continue learning together. Thank you.
Absolutely. No, that's awesome to hear, Elena. And yeah, I see a lot of organizations doing this well, and I see a number of organizations struggle with it as well. But I think if you if you want to generate good buy-in among staff, it all starts very early, right? As you're kind of thinking about what are the problems we're solving, what are the solutions we're considering, getting the team on board at that stage, thinking about what donors have seen and getting partners and donors on board as well in the early stages, really critical to kind of getting their buy-in downstream, when you're looking towards rolling out the solution. So that's awesome. Awesome to hear.
Zach, it's never a linear process. I mean, there will be back and forth, and this journey has lasted now 4 years, and we are really looking forward to, even enhancing what we are doing. And some of, I think our frontier will be really to get even the communities in that process. I think we are dreaming about that. We are working towards that. But it's never a linear process, and this is to our audience. I know there are so many of them on the line that are looking to us. Of course, Tostan and Catholic Relief Service have very different sizes, but I think everyone goes through that journey. So I just want to give them really a lot of confidence that, it's a possible journey. You just need to pace it the way the organization is really geared to. And so good luck with those journeys.
There's a light at the other end of the tunnel. Tim, you mentioned before some challenges around kind of getting everybody aligned, getting everybody on board within the organization. Maybe can you expand a little bit on that? What have been the challenges there, and how have you guys gone about really building alignment within CRS?
Yeah, that's kind of that's the magic sauce, right? And like Elena was saying, so when I look at this, there's no set pace, right? So and you got to start looking at other things to say, well, are we getting that traction? Are we getting alignment? So kind of anecdotally, when we started this, we had one of the business divisions was kind of thought that they were left out, and we have this large overseas component. We're serving almost over 1,000 users in 100 countries. And this other group only had maybe 100 here in the U.S. And so there was this perceived dichotomy of value on the platform. And one of the things that we had to change was it's not about the number of users or the amount of data. It's really coming back and looking at the value that you're providing to a set of users, right? So that was one of the things that we looked and started to change how we thought about value in the system. And then we started to look at, throughout, like we'll take our advocacy team as an example. What did they need to do to make their job better, right? They needed information. They needed to be able to tell the story. Well, that information was in our system, right? And it's one of the reasons why we're rebuilding it, is so that they can get better access to that system. But you start looking at the value of saying, hey, we have all these programs, and we're doing all of this. We're doing all the analytics with you as an example, with Amp Impact. That's now valuable to the advocacy team and the major donor team, saying, hey, don't you want to know how to transition a specific story about, say, bed nets or mosquito nets, and how many people were beneficiaries actually receive them, right? That's valuable information. So when you started to break down those barriers, and people are saying, yeah, I need that, now you get excitement, and you start to paint that vision. And that's the one thing that I'm a very big advocate of, is painting the vision, painting that art of the possible. If you were to have this information, would that make your job easier? How are we continually making the people in the field that use the system better, more effective at making decisions based on the information they had? And this will be an ongoing transformation for the next several years, if not in perpetuity, because we're moving from like HQ, corporate headquarters, whatever you want to call it, the organization needs this information, so input it, from this poll into now, how do we have this system set up so that it provides value for you in your day-to-day work? And so one of the visions that I throw around is, I want this platform to be as ubiquitous as Outlook, right? Like, people need to be in here to do their job on a daily basis, because that's when we know we're having success. But we're making progress along the way, right? So we have what we've been doing to bring this and paint this vision together is we have quarterly group meetings, and sometimes they're facilitated by Salesforce or ourselves. And when we started this, we came up with a name for the program, and being that everybody thought this was the most daunting thing we ever did, we called it the Project Marvel. So a little superhero action there, because we knew it was going to be a heavy lift, and so that was one thing, and we started to build some momentum around that and find some joy in this. And I think this is the other thing that people need to really pull out, is that these are fun projects. That doesn't mean that they're easy, but you gotta I like to make sure that people are having fun, that they're being recognized for that. And we start to look for the small wins. Are we really connecting the dots across our organization? And one aside, this just happened just recently. We have called, in the overseas portion of Salesforce, it's always been called Gateway. And there's been a lot of credibility around that. And Elena talked about data quality, and that's been an issue that we're also focusing on, and that affected our US side of the business a little bit more. But as we started to look at naming conventions across the organization, the US side of the business also picked up on the term Gateway. And so now we have this platform that's uniformly called Gateway. It's built on Salesforce and Amp Impact and the Nonprofit Success Pack. And now we're layering applications on top of that to facilitate our business. And that, to me, was a huge win and a huge recognition of, yes, the organization's coming together. It's coalescing around the platform, the name, the data, the information, and the ability to tell stories. So now our job is to finish delivering it. So it's been kind of
amazing,
good time. Yeah.
So interesting kind of tidbit of commonality between both you guys and Tostan there, which I didn't realize we had as a kind of a learning, but the subtle importance of naming your system something, so it isn't the Salesforce system or isn't the Vera system or something along those lines, but giving your system a name, I think, creates a sense of identity and a sense of ownership, and we've definitely seen that with a number of organizations already, other organizations that we've worked with. But I love what you said about kind of really showing showing the value and also designing with end users. Nick, let me turn to you, as we're just talking about capacity and people. What are the gaps that you're seeing? What are the trends you're seeing in the sector in terms of capacity building, and how are the gaps getting filled?
Thanks, Zach. And it's always great to follow someone from CRS, Tim, because you all have been a leader in all things kind of tech, monitoring and evaluation, being data-driven. We've worked with y'all for many years. But Zach, what I think is really exciting is that there are more organizations, large and small, following some of these best practice examples like CRS. And we're seeing this reflected in this framework called the Principles of Digital Development. And this is, maybe more for the international development crowd, but certainly there's no reason why these principles couldn't be relevant for the nonprofit crowd. So these are essentially a set of living guidelines that have been established and kind of collaboratively created by a number of organizations over many years that really are kind of a best practice set of guidelines for how you do digital transformation, digital development well. So things like designing with the user, kind of the human-centered design world, using open standards and thinking about sharing data, being data-driven, addressing privacy and security, a big consideration for many NGOs these days, thinking about sustainability and scale in new ways. So what's neat, Zach, is that folks actually can go on to digitalprinciples.org, they can read through these, and they can get their organizations to actually sign off and endorse these principles as a way to not just do program design, but also to think about how they do their own internal tech. And that's another point I did want to mention. That another trend we're seeing, Zach, is that there are more and more organizations who are saying, okay, sure, we have our IT departments and they're fixing our internet and they're making sure our computers work. But you know what else we need? We need a team of people who are dedicated towards the digital pieces of program design. And so that's really a very, very exciting to see, is this kind of digital units cropping up in various organizations. The second point I'd love to mention here is that we've been doing a lot of work with the digital principles to train donors. So I think, the initial instinct was, okay, digital transformation really needs to start at the level of the implementing organization. Let's get a bunch of CRSs and Tostans in the room, and we'll work with the program managers, and we'll just digitally transform them and upskill them. Well, okay, that's nice and that's important, but we also have to go as far upstream as possible. And that's why a lot of our training and capacity building work over the past couple of years has focused on really training large donors who fund a lot of the work in development on how to actually write an RFP that deals with digital technology. How do you ensure that all the reporting and requirements that you want to see manifest relate to the best practices for systems like Amp Impact? How do we kind of connect those dots so that the money can actually flow to be able to do what we want to do? So that's been very exciting. And then next slide. I think all of this is happening at the right time because we have a pretty far-reaching digital strategy that was collaboratively generated by USAID. It just released in April, and so they've been on as an organization, as an agency, a 2-year journey to get as much input as they can. And there's a lot in here on how to do capacity building well. So we definitely encourage folks to go deeper and to look at that because now is quite the time. And the last thing I'll say, the next slide, is that in addition to these large multilateral donor agencies really trying to figure out the digital transformation piece, we're seeing a lot of tech companies also realizing that they have tools and capacities to help nonprofits. So obviously, Salesforce has been leading in this field, but we're doing work with groups like Facebook and with TechSoup to be able to create courses online, to be able to sort of use Microsoft products, or in Facebook's case, to think about all the data that they're collecting and how nonprofits might be able to use their population density maps. I think this is the future. I think we're going to see more of this. And I think these big tech companies like Salesforce, Facebook, and Microsoft have a big role to play in upskilling the nonprofit landscape. So back to you, Zach.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, certainly seems to be a ton of momentum in this space right now, not just due to the pandemic, but really, before the pandemic as well. I think we saw a lot of momentum with the work that you all are doing, the work that Salesforce is doing with Trailhead and My Trailhead. Maybe we'll come back and talk about that a little bit later, but yeah, fantastic. One thing you touched on that I didn't want to let slip was digital units popping up within organizations. That's also something that we're seeing, and I think it's really great to see, because I think there's an increasing need for data literacy and tech literacy among individuals and teams that really understand the business, right? The core of what your programs need, what your staff in the field need. And I think what we're hearing both from the principles of digital development, or principles for digital development, from Elena, from Tim, that importance of designing with the end user and really understanding, speaking their language, and being able to feed that into the solution is really key. And I think those digital units within organizations that are maybe a little bit more nimble than IT departments might tend to be, or have a reputation of being, is a great way to kind of drive innovation. So let's turn the topic to change management. So this is, and just a couple more questions from my side before we open it up. So certainly, as Leanne mentioned, feel free to drop, I know we got a few questions coming into the chat. Feel free to drop some more in there, and we'll get to them in just a couple minutes here. So I want to talk about change management, because this is obviously a big topic in the space of capacity building, and huge. If you're thinking about rolling out a new solution within your organization, you got to think about change management, and you got to think about it from early on. So Elena, maybe I'll start with you here. How do you manage change within Tostan, and especially as you're thinking about, as you're thinking about digital solutions, or more generally, how do you guys manage change?
Thank you, Zach, for this question. And I think there are some recurring themes on what has already been said. So allow me to repeat, some of the ideas. I think for an organization like ours, again, I was saying, really having in its DNA really a very heavy qualitative data-driven, or qualitative data origins. I think moving to a quantitative one to a quantitative dimension has seen really a big element of change management. And I think, of course, it starts again with the people. That people question, I think, was critical also to these issues. So we touched upon, I think, team that did touch upon that. It's so important to have really a governance or a change management roadmap and a governance bodies of people in charge and making sure that the process is unfolded as it has been decided, or that they check in that things are on track or needs to be reviewed, and etc. So I think the Vera Solution team was very strong in accompanying us on that journey to make sure that we had something that was built to Tostan, for Tostan, and by Tostan. And it's so important to have human-centered design. I think Nick mentioned it and went back there so many times already. It's so important that it is user-driven, that is user-informed, and so otherwise, change might happen, but then people, don't really take advantage of the system. I think more specifically to Tostan, I think people needed to understand and to appreciate how much the data, the quantitative data, was going to enhance that feedback loop, in a sense that would have allowed us to really to make better decision. And I think also what I found, and when I joined 3 years ago as a CEO, I also found a lot of information that was siloed. And I think being able to really connect all the information, connecting the dots, and making sure that information that are relevant maybe to just one team become also very relevant to another team, and so that there is a lot of leverage that can be done across the different systems. I think that is very well done within the AMP Impact system. And so project management can be enhanced by really the impact measures, and the other way around. I think that with also the integration of financial data. I think for an organization of a medium size like Tostan, that is very important to be lean, to be efficient, to be able to have a strong foundation of knowledge management as well, because of course this is how you build foundation for scaling and for being able to really amplify the impact that you see in one location. And I think also seeing that we, as I was saying in the very beginning, we have a very adaptable approach. So, we might be apples in different places, apples of different colors, but it was so important for us to be able to say, okay, we are comparing apples and apples, or maybe orange apples and, yellow apples, but not with mangoes. So, it was important to see how the methodology was enhancing outcomes in different locations through, local adaptation. And I think this will become even more critical as we explore replicability in new geographies. So working with other partners in adopting our approach, I think this element will become very, very critical. So, change management, of course, brings about different dimension in the organization, but ultimately, of course, needs to be driven by people that, again, have the appetite and the thrive to learn and to get into a new adventure.
Great thoughts. Yeah. Tim, I want to pass that over to you. Anything you would add there in terms of your learnings or best practices, tips you provide with respect to change management?
Oh yeah, I got a list. Change management takes a variety of different forms. You have organizational change management, how we're looking at the different types of projects. You have end user change management. How does that end user interact with the system? And then in our case, we had the technical team and our business teams had change management on how they designed and developed and deployed systems, right? So again, I come back to the vision. What's the vision of a given platform? And what do we want to do? And it kind of starts from the top up and saying with the organization, the executives, like, this is where there's true value and horsepower in a platform like Salesforce. But it also, you have to translate that back onto that end user, right? Is it usable enough for them to be able to get any value out of it, get the right data and put it into the system, right? So yeah, I feel that you have to look at this from multiple angles when you look at the change. one of the funny things when we started the project, I went to the team that I manage and said, hey, I have a crazy idea. I want to rebuild the entire platform. And the first response was, no, that's not possible, right? Because they've been conditioned, and part of that was the measurement, like where are we in our maturity? And he said that's not really doable. It's all custom. I'm like, yeah, but what if it wasn't? Again, painting that art of the possible to them. And over time, they started to be like, yeah, you know what? If we used MPSP, we could do this. We wouldn't need all this custom code. And so you get them engaged in that. And so that was a kind of a critical piece for us to get them to kind of turn the corner and say, yeah, this is fun. This is a good time. We're going to be able to do more with less people and expand their own skills and their own learnings, which Nick has been talking about, which is fantastic. And then the end users, we started to look at, like, all right, if you look at our current system, there's a mile-long list, page in Salesforce to entering data. There's related lists and there's all these things, and we're like, how do we simplify that? Like, how do we make that better for the end user? And so we did some design sessions, and one of the things that we did is we brought all of the well, not all users, but we brought a representation of all of the users together a couple of times, once in last fall, and then at the beginning of the kickoff of the project in January. And it starts with listening, right? It starts with where are your pain points as the end user, and you don't try to necessarily solve them, but you start to absorb that and say, all right, well, if we could do that, if we could change these things, and you get them engaged and say, yeah, if you could do that. A lot of that's low-hanging fruit. A lot of that's like, oh, well, I don't know why we're not doing it now, but okay. So now you get them engaged and you're bringing them along. And what we're looking for are those what we call them gateway coaches, but they're really super users that can then go out and help other people that may not be as familiar or may not be as technically savvy, right? We're in 100 different countries, and you can't ever assume that those end users have the same technical aptitude that we do here in the States, because it just doesn't exist, right? Some of them, they barely, they're out and they're delivering nets, and they're in the field doing this, and they come back once or twice a month to enter some data on a computer. So you really have to be cognizant of where people are technically that are those end users. And so we're changing how we're training them, right? So we're not doing it. We still have monolithic. Here's your manual, but now we're embedding better help in the system, so that they like, oh, what does that feel? Oh, that's what that means. I get it. We're doing quick video snippets so they can come in and be like, here's the explanation. So we're really getting a lot more dynamic on that training and end user pieces. So again, it's to be open, listen to your constituents across the organization, what's working, what's not. Don't take offense to it. If something's not working, okay, well, it doesn't work. That's fine. Now we know. That is a great thing to understand, is like, that didn't work. Okay, now I know that. So, and through my career, that's always been something where people are like, well, that they take like this personal affront of, well, then what I designed isn't good. No, that's a great thing. That is a great thing. Now you can go fix that and move it on. So, I get really excited about this. This is a fantastic place to be to transform an organization and move it forward. It's very doable. So, yeah, I'll pass that back to you.
100%. Starting by listening. I think one of the things you're doing when you start by listening isn't just informing yourself and designing with the end user, but you're also showing the end users that you're going to keep listening, right? That you care about what they think, and that this system is ultimately serving to meet their needs, right? And it rings a bell. It's funny thinking about the different scales. I mean, I started my career working in the field in South Africa, running monitoring and evaluation for kind of a growing HIV prevention nonprofit. And what we had, this was 12 years ago, what we had was paper, data getting collected every day, feeding into an Excel spreadsheet that would get entered every 3 months, that would go into another Excel spreadsheet. And you have one person sitting on top of this that sends a PDF to the funder, right? And one day they gave me the jump drive and said, you're in charge of it now, good luck. And so I set out to try to overhaul this. But the first thing, and I didn't have all the learnings of how do we go about digital transformation. Heck, I didn't even know what digital transformation meant. But I started by listening. I went out to talk to the volunteers and the staff in the field and heard about, their perspectives on the approach and how they felt. They felt at the time like they were being policed, and they didn't see, what was coming from the data they were collecting day in, day out. They didn't have the kind of feedback loops that Elena was speaking about before. And when you don't have that, people don't value the data quality as much. They don't feel like the system exists for them. So we, the end of that story was we overhauled that system, built one of the first Salesforce-based M&E systems back in 2008, 2009, and that totally transformed the way that that organization was working, and led to lots of more innovations down the road. But it's funny to think about. You've got a lot of the same challenges and same solutions really that you see at the scale of CRS, but also down in the field. So we've got about 10 minutes left, and I want to turn over. I've been seeing a few questions pop up. So Leanne, maybe you can jump on and share what's coming in the question feed.
Yes, Zach, I'm going to give you 2 quick fire questions, and then we have some questions for the panel. So the first question is quite straightforward one. Do you need to use Salesforce to use AMP Impact?
So it's a good question. You do need to use Salesforce to use AMP Impact. AMP Impact is a native Salesforce solution, but it's built on the Salesforce platform. And so without getting into a whole PhD course on Salesforce licensing, there's different kinds of Salesforce licenses. AMP Impact works with the most basic ones. And so if you're looking at kind of rolling out a program solution to hundreds of staff, or even just dozens of staff in your organization, you can do that with the more basic Salesforce licenses, but then have the more advanced ones for fundraising, for case management, and that sort of functionality. So AMP Impact it is entirely on Salesforce, but you can use it with the most basic licenses if you want to.
Thank you. And if you think about Vera Solutions and the types of organizations that you work with, Zach, what type of organization do you tend to work with? And are there any types of organizations that you wouldn't necessarily prioritize to work with because of what you offer?
Sure. Yeah, I'll keep it really quick. I mean, we work with a massive diversity of organizations. So, from grassroots community-based organizations to lots of, international NGOs and humanitarian organizations like CRS. Obviously growing organizations like Tostan. But then we also work with a lot of funders as well, and grant makers. And I think we're seeing a lot of growth in that space. And it's as Nick touched on, the importance of helping funders go digital as well is something that we're really passionate about. The one thing that we are really firm about is we're an impact-driven company. We're working to amplify the impact of the social sector. We care about the impact of our clients. We think of our impact as the delta that we affect in our clients' impact. So we don't work with profit-seeking 100%, for-profit firms in the private sector. We only work with what we consider to be social impact organizations that are improving the SDGs.
Great, thank you. Now I think we've got a couple of panel questions then. So the next question came on a bit early. The webinar invite that we'd sent out to promote this webinar today talked about creating scalable technology training. One of the attendees has commented they don't think of Salesforce as a training platform, but are any of the panelists using Salesforce for training people, or what other tools are they using?
Tim, you touched a little bit on videos, and then I would also love to hear Nick's take on this one as well.
Yeah, I'd like to hear Nick's take on this too, but I'll just tell you what we're doing. So we have, CRS, we leverage a bunch of different tools for learning, LinkedIn Learning and things, but around our process, we are looking at embedding more training on the platform for the processes that Salesforce supports. So we're looking at things like WalkMe and these types of things. Then Salesforce has some native functionality that we're probably going to start with very quickly for that training. And again, we look at training as a layer, right? So not everybody learns the same way, but our goal is to give them the information they need at the point in time they need it for the process. And Salesforce has some things to do for that, but that, to be clear, we're not using that as our overarching training platform, if you will, but we're leveraging it to support those processes. So Nick, I'll turn it over to you.
Oh man, big question, but I can certainly, give my 2-minute answer, or minute answer. I think, look, there's a range, there's a spectrum between kind of reference. How do we solve kind of on the job, tactical challenges inside software versus like, you know, courses, workshops, stuff that do more than just skills build, like actually build relationships alongside skills. And in between, there's just lots of different varieties and modalities. In this world we're living in now, where everything is virtual, I think we're definitely seeing more organizations turning to a mixture of the LinkedIn Learnings, the Udemys, the Udacities for doing that kind of general skills building. And then internal to organizations, they've got, you know, this is the software they're using, these are the skills they need. Our role has always been a bit more abstracted. We want to build those relationships alongside skills, and we believe people learn better kind of, you know, if they're in cohorts of other people at the same time. So we kind of end up with more of a virtual workshop model, which surprisingly can scale pretty well. Again, I mentioned that conference we did. We had 150 sessions of about 100 people in each session, 30 to 100 people across, you know, 4,000 folks. And folks were attending multiple sessions. They could jump in and out. But I do think that there are some really powerful ways to get this medium to work of kind of virtual learning, to keep that intimacy, to build those relationships, to still do the skills building, but achieve that scale that many of you are grappling with. Back to you, Zach.
And I think
yeah, go ahead, Leanne.
Time for another question, and I'm going to combine two because they're a little bit similar. And one of the questions, Tim, was specifically for you. So I'd love to hear more about how you simplified the user experience in Salesforce. One of the biggest issues that one organization has from users is that it can be a bit tricky to navigate some of the screens that have been designed. Do you have any quick wins that you've put in place? And another question was about some struggles with user adoption. I don't know if we can maybe combine those about quick wins to simplify the user experience and quick wins for user adoption.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting conundrum, right? So when we look at where we were, we had the classic version of Salesforce, and we had these super long pages, and it was very difficult to, you know, after all of the customizations that we have done, you had to scroll and scroll to find what you needed. And what we weren't really good at was the process aspect. So if you wanted to go look at a project or a program, you'd go up and there's the page. So one of the, obviously the quickest one was we moved to Lightning, and that gives us a better interface, and it gives us more flexibility on the page layouts and things like that. The next thing that we're looking at then is breaking the processes down so that depending on what stage I'm at in that process, I only see what I need. And so that's going to be an ongoing evolution of the new platform when we break that up. And that's when we start to show that, that's when people get really excited. Well, I only need to do data entry to create a project. Great, here's your screen. Well, now I need to approve it. Here's the 5 pieces of information I need to approve that. And then obviously you can always go get the entire record, but getting the people the information they need at the point in time in the process is one of the changes that we're making in the system. And again, we've had the system out, especially in our overseas component for years. So we're not trying to do it all at once. And I think that's the other big thing is you make these incremental changes, and you change, at least for CRS, because this is not a one size fits all, but for us, we're going to make these changes now incrementally over time to put more processes in place. And the other thing, just real quick on the training and adoption, we are blessed to have a phenomenal training team. So we just, part of this process is we've just integrated with Oracle. And so we've been running webinars, and we've had over 500 people just joining webinars, quick, half an hour, getting in, and we're keeping it specific to the topic. And we've gotten really good results out of that. And that team and our overops team has done a great job. On our mission and mobilization team, our US sided team, a lot of those users are going to be brand new. So we're giving them first looks. We're doing demos of the system so that they start to understand that. We have our super users giving what a day in a life looks like. So we always look at this from an expectation management thing and setting the right expectations as they go into it. So I'll stop there because I know we're getting short on time.
So maybe I can help close this out, and I would reiterate on user adoption. The main thing I've learned over the last 12 years is it comes down to 2 things, both of which Elena and Tim hit on today: simplicity of what you're asking people to do and the value that they perceive from doing it. So really showing that value is key. So I want to just thank everybody for today, for joining us today. I want to thank the panel for joining us, Elena, Nick, and Tim, and Salesforce for hosting. Thanks, Leanne. I want to give a quick shout out also. There's a great event coming up next week, Good Tech Fest. So check it out, goodtechfest.com. If you enjoyed the conversation today, I think there'll be a lot of other really fascinating conversations around these topics at Good Tech Fest next week. So definitely do check it out, and you can reach out to us at Vera if you want a special discount code, as we're helping sponsor that to hopefully drive some more great conversations on these topics. So thanks again, everybody, for joining, and wishing everybody an amazing rest of the day forward. Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.